Okay, today I'm going to take you through step by step how I made this dunk tank. Okay, so right up front, I'll tell you the mandate for this dunk tank was to make it as cheaply as possible. So it's a lot of construction's wood where if I was going to do something more permanent or for to last longer, if I wanted to spend a little more money even, I would have made some other things out of steel. But it works great the way it is, and could actually probably get a couple years of infrequent use out of it like this. So we'll step right into step one of the construction. Okay, so step one is to actually acquire the tank itself. Now this is probably going to be the most expensive or difficult to acquire piece. But if you look around, you'll find that tanks like this are used in a lot of different places. I would suggest you can check the classified ads to see if there's anybody selling like a used fish tub or something like that. Also, go to like an industrial park and you'll see a lot of businesses probably use tubs like this for various things. So they may even be getting rid of one that might be damaged or have a hole in it, and you could patch up to just hold water for the purpose you're going to use it for. But basically, the size of the tank you're going to look for, you're going to want something no smaller than 3 feet by 3 feet, even up to 4 feet by 4 feet. So you want it big enough so you're going to be able to dunk an adult, and they're not going to bang their elbows off the side of it when they drop into it. In step two, we'll be building the tower. The tower is basically the frame that everything attaches to for the dunk tank. You'll see here in this photo that your 2x4 frame here, it's what your seat sits on top of, it's what the arm attaches to, it's what the trigger mechanism attaches. Basically, this is where everything gets attached to. You can see I've outlined in red the pieces of what I consider to be the tower. I've cut my 2x4s to length here. It's quite simple construction. It's just like a rectangle with some cross bracing is all it is. I've got my pieces cut out here, pre-drilled. You can see the holes are pre-drilled just so my deck screws don't split the 2x4s. Now I'm lining up the pieces. The piece that's circled here isn't actually part of the tower. It's just I'm using it to line up the edges so that I get it straight. And then I'm going to put the 3-inch deck screw right through both holes, and I continue this for the rest of the tower. In step 3, we will construct the seat. Now, the seat's quite simple. I just used a piece of 2x10. You can use any piece of wood, sturdy enough to hold an adult. I attached the seat to the top of the tower with 2 door hinges, and there's a carriage bolt that goes down through this piece of flat bar that's on an angle, which actually attaches to the trigger mechanism. The other thing which isn't done in this picture is you'll want to curve the end of the seat here to make it comfortable for the person who's sitting up there. You'll get a feel for when you sit on it what needs to be carved away to make it more comfortable to sit on. Okay, step 4. So we're building the trigger mechanism here in step 4. So what was used for the trigger mechanism, as you can probably already see here, is just a pair of vice grips. I was thinking when I was going to build this of all types of more complicated systems with holes and pins and stuff that would be spring loaded and stuff I would have to build. And online I was going through some image searches for dunk tanks, and I seen someone had used this idea and immediately knew that's the that's what I was going to go with, because if you've ever used a pair of vice grips, you'll realize that once they're clamped, and when you press this little release mechanism on the vice grip itself, it doesn't take a lot of pressure, and those clamps open right up. So it works great that way. You can see, I'm going to try to show you in another photo here, there's a piece of angle iron that I've bolted to this cross 2x4 that I put in on an angle as well, the same angle as the 2x4. You'll need to fit this, all of these pieces. Once you have your seat on, you're going to come on a diagonal right from the back of the seat down to where you attach the cross brace here. So all of that's going to need to line up at the right angle. You'll also see, if I go to another photo here, that on the side view there's a couple of things to note. One, I just simply welded the vice grips right to the piece of angle here. On the end of the flat bar, I put a piece of round stock welded, and that just fits the jaws nicely so that it doesn't want to slip out of the vice grip jaws when they're closed. And I guess the last thing to note here is that on the end of the arm, I really just took another piece of flat bar and twisted it to fit in between, on an angle, to fit in between the vice grips when they're closed. And this is what will actually touch the release mechanism on the vice grips when the target's hit. And the reason I did this is that it's easily adjustable, this piece of flat bar. You can bend it and twist it as you need to afterwards, so you don't have to be real precise when you're assembling the arm. You can do some fine adjustment here by pivoting above this bolt or giving it some extra twist on the flat bar. And it just makes it a lot easier to set up in the beginning. Alright, we're at step 5 now, and in this step we will build and attach the arm. Okay, so the what I'm calling the arm itself is this basically this piece of pipe here. Now this was just a piece of pipe that I had lying out back in my metal pile behind the garage. It really, you can see it's got a bend upward here, and then it goes it'll go out level again. That was already in the piece, and I didn't bother straightening it just because it kind of put the target at the height that I wanted it. So if you're using a piece of pipe yourself, you may actually want to put a bend in it so that the target ends up being, you know, the proper height for you, and you'll really be the one to judge that, how high you want the target. It's really just personal preference. So the first thing I had to do in order to attach this arm was, you'll see I with the red lines here, is build just a 2x4 frame that I screwed to the tower. And it just consists of a 2x4, this horizontal one, and then a vertical short piece screwed with deck screws to the other one. And pretty crude and simple, but I just needed something to attach the hinge to. And you see I've circled here, the hinge itself is just screwed to the piece of wood. But before I did that, I welded the hinge right to the piece of pipe for the arm. And that really gives it the point to pivot on. The other thing to note, I kind of mentioned it earlier in step 4, but was this piece of flat bar that I've drilled through and bolted to the arm. And the reason I did it this way is because it gives me more flexibility to fine-tune the position in between the vice grips. Otherwise, really, I would have to be adjusting something way back out here by the hinge in order to change that position in between the vice grips. This way I can just bend this piece of flat bar which way I need. Another thing to note, you'll see this red line. I put it here to show after final construction, I realized that you know, any little bit of wind, or even if this thing wasn't setting perfectly level, the target itself or the arm may want to drift backward, and if it does, it could easily set off the trigger for the vice grips. So I added a bungee cord around the arm to the front part of the tank, and this basically kept pressure at all times, pulling the target forward. But if it got hit with a ball, it was easily still pushed back and could easily still release the mechanism properly. It actually worked quite well with that amount of tension on it. The last thing is I added another bungee cord. I know, lots of bungee cords. But around the end of the arm, on the trigger mechanism end, right to the bottom of the tower. And what this did was it pulled straight down on the back of the arm, because when I got the target on the end of the arm, it had a bit too much weight, and the hinge I had used was a pretty cheap hinge anyways, and it was starting to wear and kind of bend. There was a lot of movement, I guess, in it, up and down, which I didn't like. So I just attached a bungee cord as a counterbalance, or a counterweight basically, and pulled down on it, and that was just enough pressure to balance the weight of the target out on the other end, and reduce the wear and twisting going on that hinge. Step 6 is the target. So basically, I'm saying the target, it's the actual piece that will be hit by the ball. I made this one out of 1/2-inch plywood, but the first time we used it, I really underestimated how hard people would be throwing at it. I thought, we would be just using underhand, but we had softballs to throw at it, and we got people, I swear, they were trying to throw 100-mile-an-hour fastballs at it, and it broke a couple of times because it didn't have a solid enough piece that it was attached to in the back. So I'm going to show you a little beefier construction in a diagram next, but I would also suggest that if it's possible, you might even want to make this out of completely metal, just because of how hard people were throwing. So you'll see here this line above and below, it's a side view of the actual backstop itself, and this is the hole that the target pokes through. You'll see this is just a front view of the target, and then all of the rest here is the side view. This is the 1/2-inch plywood, and this is a block of wood. You can really use anything you want or that fits, and that's what the target will screw to. This is the piece that I had, just a piece of 1-inch dowel, and it came back to here, and I had one screw in the center of the target. Anyways, that lasted a couple of overhand fast pitches, and then it broke off. So I had to beef that up a bit. So a good sturdy block of wood here. This is a metal bracket, this piece here, that's welded right to the arm and had 2 holes in it to screw to that block of wood. So basically, when you set this thing up, you will assemble this target last. So you'll poke the target through the hole and then just screw the screws in through the backdrop after the backdrop was set into place. I guess really, other than that, if you wanted to make something here out of metal, I would really say that would probably be the most durable solution. But wood will work, just make sure it's fairly solid. Step 7. In step 7, we're building the backstop. So the backstop is quite simple. Really, all I used here was metal conduit that I bent into a rectangle. I think I used like 2 pieces here that I had. One I bent that went up, bent it at the top, bent it again here, and then it joined partway down the other side, and then the other piece just had the one bend that came over and attached at the bottom. So, but basically you're just making a rectangular frame. The only other thing to note was that on the bottom of that frame I welded some 2 pieces of rebar or round stock, and right where the red arrows are, and they were long enough that I could sink them into the ground, and that's what held up the target or the backstop, sorry. That's what held the backstop up from leaning, front and back. Again, this worked well, but when we got some of those hard pitches, it started to slightly push it back. And once in the ground started to work loose a bit, it wanted to have a bit of a lean, and that would actually rest against the back of the arm. And if it was touching the arm and they hit the target hard enough, it would release the dunk tank, which is not what you want. Anyways, this will work. You just might want to add 2 small tie downs in front and stake them into the ground just to hold the target from tipping back, kind of like a tent pegs and some twine or something like that. Nothing major. All right, step 8, the final step. We're just looking at the enclosure. So basically, the enclosure is just something to protect the person sitting there from getting whacked in the head or whacked anywhere on the body, I guess, with the softball when it's being thrown in. You would think at first that it may not be necessary, but after seeing it in use the first time and some of the people that get up there to throw, yeah, I think it's definitely wise to put something like this in place. So really simple construction. I didn't put a whole lot of thought into this. Just 2x4 frame along the bottom. So one on the right side, one across the front. Same thing on the top. One across the front, one down the right side. These vertical pieces here where the wire and the plexiglass are attached to are just 1x4 decking boards. The piece of plexiglass that you see, plexiglass fairly expensive to buy, so really you just use chicken wire all around this. It just so happened that I had someone who gave me this piece of plexiglass to use. I think it was a cover or some type of guard for flat screen TV. Anyway, it fit perfectly for the application, so I threw it on. It didn't cost anything. It was just given for the project. The other thing is chicken wire. It's fairly inexpensive, and just basically stapled the chicken wire right to the wood. On a side view, this is looking at the left side, you'll see the only other thing I added, because this front piece was floating back and forth, if you will, a piece of metal conduit that I bent right here at an angle that it would go up and attach to the top corner of the wooden part of the enclosure. I just drilled it and put a deck screw in there. At the bottom, I drilled it in through the tub and put 2 carriage bolts coming out through, so the smooth side, rounded side, was inside the tank, so nobody got gouged by anything sharp. The part that protruded out of the bolt, that's on the outside of the tank. Other than that, really a metal conduit frame would have been nice to put on the whole the whole dunk tank. It would have made a little nicer finish, a little more sturdy. Maybe on the next revision.